Hello, and welcome to Metachemistry. This is episode 101, and today we're going to take some time to start digesting a lot of the initial information that we've gotten about N5. As of recording, there have been a couple faction videos posted by Corvus Belli. The N5 rulebook has been made available to some people who reached out to use it as demo material, and I believe it was for sale at Essenspiel. So we want to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the information that gives us so far. This is almost entirely a fluff book and not a rule book, so we won't be talking in depth about N5 rules just yet, but it does have most factions' generic or vanilla army lists, as well as the new sectorials coming out, counting Torchlight as the furthest back, and all the way up to the two that will be coming out with Sandtrap, which are the Kestrel Colonial Force in Pano and Shinden Butai in JSA. But before we get started, we want to give a shout to Mo Games, where you can find them at mo-games.com. They're an online supplier for Infinity, and if you are part of our Patreon page of any level, you can get a 10% discount code to that store. So if you're looking to pick some stuff up, might be a good way to do it. And also, if you join our Discord, whether you're a patron or not, you get entered in to win a $40 coupon code to Mo Games each month as part of that sponsorship. Because what's better than games? Mo Games. And for tonight, it is Ian and myself. And so we are going to be chatting with some initial kind of N5 info. But what has Infinity or other gaming looked like for you, or this kind of flurry of information that we've started getting?
It's been pretty interesting. I haven't been able to play Infinity for a while, but it's been really cool seeing some of the potential changes and the stuff and the discussions around it, and through the reveals and everything, really kind of making things. I'm excited. There's a lot of people with a lot of excitement for the new edition, so that's gonna be pretty cool. Outside of that, we just did our newest session of like our big BattleTech RPG game, and it was ridiculous fun. My pilot got real mad and decided to down 3 mechs in 2 turns.
Wow.
No, it was ridiculous. It was like one-shotting guys with like getting like through armor crits or like double cockpit hits and things like that. Kicked a leg off of another mech entirely. It was just ridiculous. Great stories, but yeah,
Sounds pretty wild. Nice. And for me, our usual game night is Thursdays, and so I was going to make it out for Infinity on Thursday, but that's when my demo pack arrived. So I got the Sandstorm bundle, and it ended up being an in night with the book. So we did that instead. A week before, though, I was able to go out and get a game in. And as much as I kept wanting to change to other things, I find myself still playing Tunguska. And now I think I might be even more excited to play Tunguska. But we'll get to that part a little bit later in the show. But yeah, so still trying to get some regular games in. Now that we have a little bit more concrete information, I can do a little bit more planning because I want to do a new players league. I'm trying to get my Sandtrap set ready for demos and things like that. So things are going to ramp up here pretty soon. That's exciting. So one of the biggest impacts as far as a mechanical rules perspective with the N5 book that we can see, because again, it doesn't contain our actual rules for the game specifically, but it does have the vanilla lists or generic lists for most of the factions, all of them except for Aleph, Hakazlam, and Toha.
who we are assured are in there. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, Toha have been confirmed to still be in the game, and obviously same with the other two. They're not going anywhere.
Unless
So
they're
that
going to combined army.
yeah, just the whole faction gets folded in. That's right. Thanks. Yeah. Yep. Started reading some of the fluff about that. I'm less happy with the change knowing the fluff than before I read it. I was hoping it would make it the other way around and that I would be more accepting, but I feel less accepting. But anyway, it's already done. So, I mean, it's just,
I'm excited.
Banging my head against the wall is about all the good it'll do me. But yeah, so that leaves Pano, Jiqing, Ariadna, O12, Nomads, JSA, and Combined Army as the factions that are available in the book. And so these lists, because some people have the N5 book available, besides the videos that Corvus Belli has been putting out about it, they are starting to kind of filter out across the internet. And I'm sure by the time that this gets posted, that'll be pretty easy to acquire information for everyone. I did go through with my copy and I posted this all to our Discord. So if you wanted to check it out because you haven't yet, you can find it there. But Ian, what you've seen the generic lists? Any like kind of first impressions going through those, particularly if you know the faction especially well?
Well, I will say that I'm pleasantly surprised that there's more units were kept than I was initially led to believe on some of the early like playtest lists and stuff that we got to preview. They actually seemed a lot more limited than what our final published lists are looking like. So I think that's pretty cool. So when I was saying that, it's going to be generic specialists, generic remotes, and like 2 to 5-ish profiles from each sectorial, it's more than that. It's actually closer to, 8 or so profiles from each sectorial plus, characters and stuff. So I think there's still a lot of versatility in the generic vanilla lists. I think there's a lot of where they've cherry picked kind of like the best thing. Although I did notice specifically with the Ariadna list that like all the skirmishers stayed available.
Yeah, there are a lot.
I figured like we're gonna get chasseurs and we're probably gonna get scouts. I didn't really, okay, I guess SAS makes sense because they're in Cosmo, although they could have just been in Cosmo. I didn't see the Foxtrot still being available because it's all of the skirmishers for Ariadna, it's the most basic, has not really anything special that sets it apart, but it is also the cheapest. So
it's only available in US otherwise, right?
Yeah, it's only available in the US and vanilla. So, yeah. But yeah, I didn't see that one sticking around, but it did. So that's a nice, pleasant surprise. But also CB saying that, they were going to be putting in like 50-ish new units into the game, and we're seeing a lot of that spread throughout these lists where it's like, oh, that's a new icon, that's a new something. And then the book has a lot of images and previews of those new units, and some of them are really cool looking, and I'm pretty excited for.
Yeah, I think it generally comes out to around like each faction gets like between roughly 3 to 5 new things. Some get a couple more, like in the case of particularly Pano and JSA. Obviously, they get more than that because they have a whole new sectorial to fill out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, everybody's getting some stuff. And looking at the generic armies, the things that kind of stand out to me is that it is, for the most part, kind of like best in slot units. Mm-hmm. Not always, of course, like you said, with Ariadna, there's a bunch of like all the skirmishers. But there's far fewer of the like redundant units, like different things that have the same kind of role.
Yeah.
And do generally the same job. But also, if it came in their Code 1 set of releases, so the Code 1 collection for each faction. That's almost all available in each faction going
And
through
that keeps it primarily in print stuff too.
Exactly. Yeah. And then reinforcements.
Yep.
So all of the reinforcements are available in each generic. I believe there might be a couple exceptions, but generally speaking, all of the units from each reinforcement set is available in each generic faction. And anything that was in the collection boxes, just about, those are all in there as well.
Yeah.
One thing that was kind of interesting to me was that all of the Defiance characters went away except for Jazz.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, because of all of them, Jazz would be considered the problem child. So, but yeah, Jiang Uma Sorensen, Caden, First Strike, and then we don't know about Trishala and Rahani.
Yeah.
But it's relatively safe to say that they're probably not in there. The other big thing, which I'm really happy about, is that mercenaries are basically out of vanilla.
Yeah.
There's essentially none. Besides like war cores, everyone gets war cores, other than Combined Army. The Combined Army still gets the Liberto. And that still irks me. But otherwise, they're basically all gone. So the kind of ubiquitous mercenaries that would show up in every faction, even over choice units in faction, which has bugged me for a while, and I've not made that a secret on this show. Yeah, those are basically all gone except for O12. O12 still gets diggers, beast hunters, monstruckers. But yeah, that's it really. Like otherwise, there's none of those are in any other vanilla faction, and the Liberto are oddly only in Combined Army, which if they're going to be anywhere, that's not where I would have expected them.
But also, if that's the only place I have to really face them consistently, okay.
Yeah, I still don't love it.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that would just be in a mercenary company somewhere, and that'd be the draw for, like, if Deshat sticks around, for example.
That's fair.
Kind of like what I consider the home of the Liberto.
Yeah, that's fair. I was kind of going on what they trimmed down. It seems like most of the vanilla factions are sitting right around that like 45 to 55 unit options, being cut down from the like 80 to 90 unit options that were in vanilla prior, in like Ariadne and Pano specifically. Combined Army also had a lot, but like, yeah, it seems like there's a lot of stuff came out, but when you're looking at the list, it's like, wow, what's left is really kind of the best stuff, and there was room for him to add more new stuff into each faction that looks really cool.
Yeah, and so that's something that I think is really interesting, because I believe that is very telling in terms of which factions are looking for reworks next, or rather, which sectorials are looking to have reworks next for each faction. So one, again, by the time this is by the time this was recorded, the Zhuqing video came out, and so it was confirmed that ISS is getting a rework, which we talked about with Bostra while he was here for the Krug, and that ISS will be coming out next for Zhuqing, and it's tentatively going to be the Adepticon release.
Yep.
So that's exciting stuff. And then the other ones are very obvious, of course, for Pano and JSA. We already know these. It's going to be Kestrel and Shinden Butai. So nothing exciting there that people don't already know about. I mean,
yeah.
So for the other ones, I think that besides O12 doesn't really. O12 already kind of got theirs as well. They just got it at the tail end of 4th instead of in 5th. But that leaves Combined Army, Nomads, Ariadna as our other ones that are going to get some reworks based on things that we've seen in the fluff so far, new units that are appearing, things like that. So I feel pretty confident that these are going to be next for each of those factions. Obviously, no idea in terms of what order they'll come out in. But one of the things that Bostria had also mentioned is that they want to kind of front load the releases a bit heavier so that new factions are more available sooner instead of taking like a year to have the sculpts for your faction. So we don't know what that'll look like yet, of course, but I'm sure
More
that
focused releases around a faction. Like, not to say that you won't get a little drip for everything, but that it'll be more focused around faction by faction as they're redone.
Yeah. So I'll start off, and Ian, you can take Ariadna. But looking at Nomads, I feel like it's very likely that they're going to get a Tunguska rework next. They're the oldest Nomad sectorial, as far as like the last time it's been reworked.
Which is funny because they're the newest sectorial for Nomads that's in the game.
Right. Yeah, that was a good year.
Yeah.
I think that's the same year that OSS came out. 2018, 2019, something like that.
Yeah, it was like OSS, Tunguska. Yeah, it was
TAC and...
Yeah, TAC got their work then, yeah.
Rama, maybe? Was Rama that year?
Yeah, I think Rama.
But yeah, so there are several new units here that we can look at. There's the Switchers Grupa. There's the Tunguska Triggermen. There's the GoPods, which, looking at the art, it's like the pilot looks exactly like the Zonautica pilot. So that feels very Tunguska to me. It's also got the same like kind of a on black background that Tunguskan logos tend to have. And one thing that we didn't mention about generic armies that I think is interesting, but we don't have any real info yet, is that there are tag pilot profiles in the list. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to give a speculation for right now so that I can be disproven by the time this comes out, I'm sure. But I am kind of wondering if these tag pilot profiles that are in factions that have manned tags, I'm thinking that you may be able to take them and they replace the basic pilot on a manned tag and give it some difference of abilities. Maybe it boosts damage on their weapons, or maybe it gives them an extra stat somewhere, or maybe it gives them a special rule or something like that. But you can basically buy one and attach it to a tag, and then that becomes the tag's new pilot for whatever that happens to cost. That's my guess. You have any thoughts or speculations there, Ian? What you think those might be?
That's the only thing that kind of makes sense, because like they are in most of the lists specified as like a tag pilot. So it does seem like it would be like an upgrade model somehow. Although weird, because we don't have currently any other models where you take it and it attaches to something else in a manner where the model isn't really on the board, which you would think a tag pilot would be in the tag, not on the board. So new mechanic maybe, but yeah, I think something where it's where it is boosting, some level of stat or adding some level of special rules or something to them. I think they would likely not, if that's the case, not be an order generating model. They might operate more like a PAL bot, synchronized servant bot kind of thing would, as far as like you buy it, you attach it to a model, it doesn't generate orders, but you can use it for whatever. But obviously, it's like it's in the tag.
Right, like you can't take one without taking a tag, and if you take a tag with that, it gets that pilot instead. That's my rough thinking.
Yeah.
Just a guess, but that's what I'm thinking so far. Because I'm not sure how they would interact with them much otherwise, unless they did something like the Rem racers, I guess. But they're manned tags already, so it doesn't
Yeah.
make a whole lot of sense for them to remotely be able to enhance the tag. Also, on that note, kind of funny that Rem racers were around only in generic armies. They never got a model,
Yeah.
and then now they're going away. And I never saw them on the table, I don't think. The only one is the Apsara because she's an OSS. And I'm the one who played her. I mean, Andrew, I've seen Andrew play her, but usually the
Yeah.
Killer Hacker one. But yeah, I do think that that's kind of funny that just kind of fell off.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I really wanted model, and I was hopeful for a moment that Rem Racers
The game,
wouldn't
yeah,
the game like wouldn't necessarily have like the pilot or the human model, but I was kind of hoping for a minute that the remotes in it would be infinity scale, but they're not. They're much smaller.
yeah.
Because I was like, "Ooh, this could be really cool." I get it; it's a board game, very fun board game, by the way.
Nice.
But
I haven't tried it myself.
yeah, it fits for what they're doing for the board game. But I was hoping there was going to be a little more cross utilization potential, and that maybe would have, they'd have done a special version or something with Rem Racer models for the human profiles, and I'm like, that would have been really cool because they did that with like when Aristea first came out. There was the special edition that came with all of the Aristos in metal,
Right.
so things like that. But yeah.
So yeah. So for the next one, what about Ariadna? I think that there are some pretty clear hints in there, but what have you seen? What are the new units there, and where does it look like they're going?
So this has definitely got to be a Tartary Army Corps redo, because the new stuff is very themed around attack-ish kind of stuff. I'm really excited for it. Some of this stuff is from like little previews that we've seen on it and in the book. Looks really cool. So there's the conductors, the Trans-Tartarian Railway Troops. It just sounds cool. Like, I don't remember specifically kind of like what they were doing, but like it sounds cool. There's the Barsuk Territorial Defense Regiments. Seems like kind of more like border, defense against the antipodes, things like that. So pretty cool there. Outside of that, there's the Kybervolk patrols, which, oh wow, like this stuff it's cool. It looks like it's going to be a new like synchronized unit, but the synchronized element of it looks like a cybernetic zombie antipode. Because we needed that, and fluff-wise, it makes sense when you consider the background information on like the bear pods and the Volkalock and the surgical enhancements stuff they've received. This is just peak ridiculous, and I'm here for it. The artwork is great. I'm excited to see how they turn that into a model.
Yeah, the art's pretty wild.
Yeah. The thing I'm weirdly the most excited for is was it the Vistral Mobile Artillery Regiment? It's a tractor mule with what looks like an autocannon on it.
Baby tank.
Yeah. Well, it is, so in our Discord, Devin posted a thing, a description, and I'm like, oh yeah, like it should totally be this. And like I posted a picture of like the World War I German like railway guns that were like just huge and would lob shells like 150 miles kind of thing, and then he posts the picture and it's a tractor mule with a can. I'm like, yep, nailed it. It was
pretty much.
It's pretty solid. I'm down there. And then yes, there's the pilots of the Mechamobilia. So there is a tag pilot, it appears, for Ariadna. So even they got one. All the reinforcements for Merovingian present. Has just a solid amount of everything else. And but a few surprises, like I said, with the Foxtrot Rangers, but also the Desperados. So hopefully they'll put those back in print or come out with some new models, because those have been out of print for a while and kind of hard to find. Right. Where everything else looks pretty available and not an issue. But that one was a surprise for me.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. Like, one thing that is semi-common is that a lot of the line troops for each generic faction have been kind of condensed, but
Mhm.
only sort of. Like, for Juxing, you get Zhanqi.
Mhm.
But for Pano, you get the Fennec Fusiliers and the standard Fusiliers.
Yeah.
That one I can only explain being relevant because Fennec Fusiliers appear to be, like, profile to profile right now, appear to be the exact same cost, just gain desert terrain.
Mhm.
I'm guessing that's
Maybe
because they want the
different
Essentials
loadouts.
pack. I think they want the Essentials pack to be playable. Like, if new players get the Essentials pack, which is 3 regular Fusiliers and an Orc,
That's fair.
and 3 Kasatsu and a Shikami,
Mhm.
I think they want those profiles to be available, which is like JSA, same thing. You have the
Yeah.
Senku troops and the Kasatsu troops. I was a little surprised that Nomads kept all 3 Mothership line troops. So they
Yeah.
have Alguaciles, Moderators, and Securitate.
Yeah. Ariadne only has the line Kazakhs and the rockets, which
Yeah,
makes sense. But yeah, there's some other weird stuff. The other one I'm looking over at that is kind of a surprise is the 45th Highlanders are available. That's another
yeah.
one of those out of print boxes that's kind of hard to get. So hopefully, but yeah, just the line Kazakhs and the rockets, which does make sense. That's the 2 most available ones, and this also kind of fits
Mhm.
with where I've been thinking that a lot of the U.S. stuff is going to get cycled out. It's like about half of it's already out of print already.
Yeah.
Because like even in the full list, there's very few U.S. models. There's the Foxtrot Rangers, there's the Desperados, and there's like Unknown Ranger and Van Zant,
Yep.
and that's really it. But Varangian Guard make the jump to vanilla with Ariadne now.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's kind of interesting. And then the last one wasn't specifically mentioned in their faction video, but it was brought up in the Krug seminar. It was touched on. I believe it was during the seminar. Maybe it was something we just talked to Buster about directly. I forget. But for
Yeah,
Combined Army, it's going to be Onyx. That's already been
yeah,
mentioned. That Onyx is going to be the next CA faction to get a rework, and it sounds like they're going to include Team Achilles, which of course is Pandora, Achilles, Tusair, Drakios, and Patroclus.
yay! Patroclus is back.
He is back.
But yeah, all the extra are present, which makes sense.
Yeah. Everyone got their reinforcements box in
Yeah,
vanilla, which makes a lot of sense to me. Like, you want those models to be available for someone to pick them up.
yeah.
So
I like the combined list overall. I think it really hits just like all the stuff. Like there's nothing that's missing that I'm like, I really need that in vanilla. Like everything they got, I'm like, no, that's pretty much what I would have taken anyway.
Yeah, one thing that seems kind of interesting is I think that their only heavy infantry are the EI aspects. I think just
Yeah.
Carontids and Mathematics might be the only heavies they can take. Oh no, they can take Rindax.
Hmm.
Rindax are heavy as well, I believe. But yeah,
Maybe.
it is interesting, and I'm sure Achilles is going to be heavy infantry. I can't imagine him not.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and it looks
Patroclus
like
has been heavy infantry in the past.
Eskin is the not heavy version, is what it looks like.
Yeah, with boarding action, Shiskin only being in Defiance, that doesn't terribly surprise me if that
Yeah.
profile just goes away.
That'd be sad. I liked that she had a couple different profiles, kind of like how Achilles had a couple different profiles, or Joan has different profiles with different stats. I did
Yeah,
like that, but I could see all of that going away.
yeah. It might still be available in Shizvasti, but
Yeah, well, like the
hard to say.
Guilo, since
Right,
that's
yeah.
only in Shazvasti.
Yeah, there were definitely some things I wasn't necessarily expecting to see, but
Yeah,
yeah, it is kind of interesting. I think that so like neither of the the Marat tags are available, for instance.
yeah.
Um, Umbra Legate are not available. Yeah, so there's some interesting stuff. Every vanilla lost things besides the mercenaries. The mercenaries took up probably a good 10 profiles for most of these
Yeah.
factions.
Yeah.
So that was easy, but then they still ended up losing probably a good 20 or 30 profiles each, and some maybe slightly more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, the Grafe operators are still there, so that's a nice choice for combined.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think that those are what we would say are very likely to be seen next for each of those factions. I think that if I had to guess, OSS is probably going to get a revamp
Yeah.
for Aleph,
Or as
because
something new.
or something new entirely, which I am not going to hold my breath for.
No, but I only say that because they are one of the factions with only 2 sectorials,
True.
and Ankh is kind of different from a lot of the OSS stuff. Like, it seems like they might introduce possibly a third sectorial that leans into something else. You're more the expert on the Aleph fluff than I am.
But all of Ankh program units are available in OSS, though.
That's fair.
But yeah, I think that it will lean more on OSS after seeing the development with Team Achilles and kind of seeing this kind of loss of control on these more autonomous and sort of free-spirited aspects. I think that it's going to crack down more, and that we'll see an OSS expansion, and that it's going to kind of resort to what Aleph might consider more controllable or more reliable units in that regard.
Yeah.
So that's what I would guess there. Hawk Islam, I don't really have a good indication of, other than it would make sense for Rama.
Actually, I solidly think Kapu.
That's fair. Yeah, Kapu could see a remake
Well,
too.
and the reason
They're older.
Well, there's 3 reasons. They're older. Melik fits mostly in Kapu.
Mm-hmm. And then the new Corsan with the bundle.
Yep. And with NA2 not being available at the start, Kapu is the traditional home for many of the major NA2 models like Drews or Kaplans or things like that, which have relatively new sculpts that do see play. That's been their, Yan Yan's even. That's been the traditional home of those models before NA2 existed.
Yeah,
so I could
original Merc faction.
Yep, I could see Kapu getting a rework, although it could be Rama. I think that it would be smart to do Kapu with NA2 not being available, because that would give a spot for a lot of those unique mercenary only profiles.
Yeah, and I think with that information, I would be inclined to agree. I think Kapu is more likely for a revamp there.
Yeah.
And as far as Toha, Toha doesn't have any sectorials, and I don't think they're going to get one soon.
No. They could have gotten Spiral, but they said Spiral's dead. Just
Spiral
dead.
is gone.
Gone.
Yeah,
because everything in Spiral, other than brawlers and a couple of kind of character units, are in or in Toha anyway. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Other than Spiral had a lot of unique profiles for units. That is
true.
But all of the units were available, at least in some form, as far as true Toha units.
Yeah. I wouldn't see. I personally would not see Toha getting sectorials until if they get a rework on all of the baseline Toha that the stuff that was the earlier stuff that was not introduced with Spiral, the older stuff getting if that ever gets a rework and brought those sculpts back into print and up to CAD N3 on standard of sculpting, I could see them maybe getting a sectorial at that point, but that's a big if.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I think a lot of it, they kind of tried with Spiral, because they introduced a lot of stuff, and since it was also in Toha, for all of that. I think it was a good
Soft revamp.
soft revamp and kind of see how it went. And I know they sold probably plenty of it, but I don't think they sold enough of it to really move forward with going all out on revamping the rest of Toha.
That could be.
A lot of cool models, though.
Yeah, they've got lots of neat stuff. As far as like, I like the general Toha look of like the more classic Toha stuff, and seeing modern resculpts of that would be really cool if that happens.
Yeah, because like the was it Nema got the modern resculpt, and like if you saw that, saw that on like the rest of the stuff, oh, it'd be so good.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and so one of the things that I think would be fun to go over is some kind of discussion on new rules and maybe units that are going to be in the Sandtrap box, because those army lists were released a little bit ago, and it doesn't have a ton to work with, but there is definitely some that we can extrapolate from things that were shown in those pages. And now they were released with the caveat that they are previews, so there can and likely will be some changes, but I think that we have a good baseline of what the unit's jobs are going to be and generally how they're going to function, even if there's little tweaks here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be kind of fun to start with some of the things on the Kestrel roster, and just kind of see some of the interesting levers that they are messing with for this design space here. It's like one that stands out as far as something that we can tell without additional rules is the Griffin Troop. So the Griffin Troop is the heavy infantry in the box for the Pano side. It is effectively an orc troop with a little bit lower fizz, but it gains MSV1, desert terrain, jump 8 inches, and a pulsar for the same cost as the current orc with HMG, the standard one. So I think that this combined with the unit cards that were shown from the Essentials kit for the orc, it was the multi-rifle and not the HMG, but it does look like orcs will probably be dropping a couple points or so, which makes sense. They are a little bare bones, and they're probably a little pricey for what you get. Like, there's nothing wrong with the orc profile, but it is probably a little too expensive.
I love them.
Yeah, orcs are cool. Like
they are bog
good
standard
stuff.
Basic troopers with nothing super special other than a really good stat line, and they get work done.
Yeah, for sure. But one of the things I think is cool about this profile is the jump 8 inches. My reading of that is that when a Griffin troop declares what is presumably still going to be an entire order skill jump, instead of jumping what would normally be 6 inches for its first move value, it jumps the value in parentheses, which is 8 inches. So I think that it does not super jump. I don't think it behaves like super jump. I don't think it's going to be a short skill. I think it's just if they declare a full jump, they get that extra little boost to their jump.
That's how I read that too.
So I think that's really interesting. And it's just more design space that they are playing around with, which I think is really interesting. Any cool examples of that, either like on the list or with any of the other things that we've seen on those lists? Like if you want to or anything like that?
The one trooper that does have super jump, it has parentheses jetpack. I don't know what that does, but it sounds like there may be slightly different versions of super jump that operate slightly differently.
Yeah, so super jump jet propulsion is obviously brand new. We don't really have a lot to go with on this, but it seems like we've seen a lot of hoverbike units. And I assume they're going to have the jet propulsion rule, and I think it's going to modify how they can use super jump, obviously, because in this case, it's part of super jump. I think that it is going to give some sort of limited flight rule, which was talked about in the Krug seminar, when in particular with drones, saying, yeah, it'll be harder for them to gain cover. but they won't be susceptible to CC because the idea is that they're flying outside of melee reach and things like that. I think that will allow Banshees and these hover bike units to, at least in some capacity, use that rule instead. But I think for drones that will be kind of an all the time thing.
Yeah.
That's my guess right now, just based on little
I'm
snippets that we've
hoping
gotten here and there.
that if I have some level of super jump, that I can CC the other flying models.
Maybe if you also have jet propulsion and we can have little jousts with hover bikes.
That'd be amazing. So that one sounded really cool. What else was there for like kind of new-ish sounding rules? And most of the stuff seemed it was very similar to what we already have, maybe just a little tweaks here and there. There were some cool tweaks on some of the equipment, which was exciting. One of the big ones was multi-sniper rifles. So double action looks like it's going to burst 1, keeping in line with every other multi-weapons kind of special ammo being burst 1. That's not, AP or shock. But interestingly, the AP and shock profiles gained suppressive fire.
Yeah, which is really interesting to me because suppressive fire is available on the list, and it appears to be unchanged from the suppressive fire we know from 4th edition, which means that multi-snipers would get increased burst, because typically suppressive fire was only on weapons that already had burst 3 or higher, and not even all of those. But it seems that you could fire a lot up close with a sniper rifle, which feels kind of weird. Like the idea of suppression fire or suppressive fire being used on a sniper rifle makes a lot of sense, but not in the way it's currently implemented in Infinity. Like, you would think that it would be a good Overwatch tool at a distance as opposed to being better up close. So I'm interested to see if that's something that is modified, but it is something that shows up on both lines for the multi-sniper. So maybe that is a thing. It could be a typo. Maybe somebody assumed it was multi-rifle instead of multi-sniper rifle and put that on there. I don't know, but that would be really interesting as a trade-off. I also think that multi-snipers should probably get a little bit cheaper if that's the case.
Another big one that I'm excited for, we gotta see again how it shakes out, is shotgun templates appear to be changing again. So the template mode for shotguns has range brackets, and no longer appears to be a teardrop template. It's not a direct template weapon anymore. It appears to be going into a hybrid of the N3 impact template, but instead of the teardrop, it looks like it's a round template. We don't know if that's a full 5-inch template or if it's a smaller template. Haven't seen anything of that, but there's been talk of it may be a smaller template. Otherwise, the light shotgun is effectively a light grenade launcher, direct fire. But I'm excited for that because I think shotguns going to direct templates, direct templates became almost too prevalent in the game. Like I know my Cosmo list, every model, I think I had one model in the whole list that didn't have some form of direct template weapon, and which was kind of gross. But also had other things to make them good as well, because traditionally a lot of the warband models that would have that direct template weapon didn't really have another gun. But now with a shotgun having that dual mode, it made it so that there was really no downside. Like shotguns aren't great range, but you can still shoot out to 24 inches. You still had a lot of just utility with it. So I think this is going to tone down a lot of the kind of the complaints about over direct template weapons, just being too prevalent. So I'm excited for it. I'm
thrilled.
I think it's going to be very interesting. We got to get the final details to see exactly how it shapes out. But I right now, again, preliminary list, it has the same wording that like the missile launcher or heavy rocket launcher does as far as what the template is. So it could be a 5-inch template, at least right now.
I think it will be. I don't think they're going to introduce a new template.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be the same circular template that we've always used, but it is burst 1.
Oh, yeah, that's everything. It's burst 1, which is nice.
So it is burst 1, but it is an impact template, which means you roll against it, and it uses the same range bands that we already know for the shotguns, which is, +6 up close, then 0, then -3.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that's a great change. It still gets a rough simulation. I mean, the N3 shotguns felt the most like smart shotguns, but it was just really tricky from a gameplay perspective to get those, because it was very easy to turn into some sort of argument.
That template's not quite straight. It curved around the corner ever so slightly to catch more models. Yeah.
Because like both players are heavily incentivized to have their interpretation be right, because it's the difference between, oh, does that hit 1 or 2 things, or does that hit 3 or 4 or 5 things?
Yeah.
Depending on how you can actually angle that, and firing from any portion of the silhouette and all that jazz was kind of obnoxious. So I think that this is a good middle ground for that, where it's not a direct template. You do have to land the shot, which means that they can be beaten, and shotguns don't have that same forking potential, because that's a very, very powerful place to be, where you can say, okay, I can either shoot at you within my +6 range, or I can place a template depending on what you do. And that's really, really powerful for how cheap shotguns are.
Well, and I think that like it's a good change as well, because by laying that template, you still have the potential to hit multiple models. It's still of great danger in ARO, because if your fire team is moving, it's presumably the same sequence of events where you shoot and everybody else gets hit, or everybody dodges against it.
Yeah, can you imagine like infiltrated hidden deployment shotguns are now scary?
Yeah.
Because you can catch a non-active model in a fire team and hit, several members at once and things like that. You can do like a much smaller version of the knock-to-fire tricks and things like that.
Yeah. Other things I've noticed that would just seem like small tweaks, like D-charges or APDA instead of AP explosive. It looked like flash pulses went down to 1 save instead of 2.
That one makes me sad.
Yeah, but it seemed like a lot of little tweaks to maybe tone down a little bit of the power level of some things, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing.
Sure.
You gotta see how it all shakes out in the final form and through some games, but so far it seems pretty cool. Plus, there's the new weapon. Was it the Thunderbolt?
Yeah, the Thunderbolt is a new.
It seemed interesting. It seemed like a almost a different take on like a contender.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you smashed a contender together with an HMG a little bit. Like it uses, I guess it's probably more accurate to say it's the range band of a Feuerbach, but it's what is currently considered damage 14, but what will be considered possibility of survival 6. And it's only burst 2 with no ammo types, just normal ammo. So it's a non-disposable weapon that fires at a long range that doesn't cost SWC and has a respectable damage value at the cost of low burst. I think that's really interesting. I think that is a cool idea for a weapon, because nothing else quite fills that space, especially not without SWC cost, because the closest would be a sniper rifle, I suppose, or maybe a heavy rocket launcher for low burst at that range. But those are all SWC weapons, and they're typically going to be 1.5 SWC unless you have poor sniper rifles.
Yeah. And then it's not a new weapon. It's a new take on an old weapon. Silenced pistols are back.
Yeah.
And they're really cool. I like how what they're went with for it. They attack BTS, right? Which is cool because they didn't before. They were just like a normal pistol, but had silenced rule. But they attack BTS, and they're disposable too. So you don't get to have the endless murder spree if nobody sees you and you keep killing models. It's you get 2 shots from it, which I think is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think that that is really interesting. Obviously, we have no idea what silenced -6 will do. I am wondering if silenced will apply if you are attacking an opponent outside of their line of fire.
Mm-hmm.
If that will count as triggering silenced, and then they get a -6 to their ARO. So like if they're trying to dodge to turn around and see you, you can hit them. Or I could also see it where if you attack something with a silenced weapon, the roll to try and change facing for other models nearby is at a -6 penalty. I could see something like that,
Yeah.
perhaps. But yeah, it is fairly potent. It's current damage 12 or PS 8, and yeah, AP shock against BTS. And one thing that's kind of neat is looking at the weapons chart. It includes the possibility of survival, the burst, the ammo type, the save roll that it goes against, which is nice, and the save number is, I'm guessing, what SN stands for, or number
Yeah.
of saves, perhaps, which is really nice. That way, it's all kind of in the same place. So that makes it really easy to read these things when they're on army lists, and I think that will be a real help to newer players that,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh wait, that's explosive. Hold on, how many dice rolls do I need to make?
Yeah.
And it's right there on the page already, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's really neat as well. And that's how I've noticed like a lot of the stuff like the D charges are DA because they only cost 2 saves now instead of 3. So things like that, and like that's actually a really cool kind of thing. And again, it's a way to simplify yet granularize the system, so there's more potential design space, but it's easier to interpret and read.
Yeah, like another thing is that the technical weapon trait seems to be gone for what I think is far more intuitive is BS weapon whip. And then
Yeah,
I'm sure grenades will be BS weapon fizz. And I think that that is a great way to do it because then you can, I mean, you could theoretically roll off of even more stats, I guess. I don't see any reason why you would currently, but you could roll off
BS
of
weapon
something.
CC,
BS weapon CC. Maybe that'll
which
be Vorpal weapons, which would be awful.
the Vorpal weapon.
That would be terrible. Don't do that. Just say no, CB. But yeah, so I like that that is in there. It's much easier to understand, and again, helps newer players or less enfranchised players come up to speed more quickly, which I think is great. But other than that, I think as far as some of the other profiles, there's some really cool stuff in here that you can take a look at. I think the other one that stands out to me before, because I know we're getting close to time, I think on the Hatamoto, the Imperial Guard,
Mhm.
what's interesting is it has nanoscreen and no cover. So
Yeah.
nanoscreen works the same way as it does in N4 from what it sounds like. It is this model counts as being in cover all the time, but it has the no cover rule, which I feel like is kind of unnecessary in this instance because I feel like it should be clear in the nanoscreen rules, just say like partial cover doesn't stack. But this makes it clear in the profile that this model can't also benefit from partial cover from terrain.
Hmm.
And it has frenzy. But if it has, I'm thinking there will be other models that have no cover. My guess is that impetuous is going away and that frenzy will take the role of what impetuous is, and you can essentially have a lesser or greater detriment by whether or not that model has no cover as well. And so if you want to have like full on impetuous models, they'll be frenzy and no cover, and what models are currently frenzy might just be frenzy but still be able to gain cover potentially, just spitballing as I see things. But I
Hmm.
think that that might be an interesting way to, again, pull different levers to make profiles that don't currently exist and might be kind of interesting as far as that goes.
Yeah, especially because like Frenzy currently seems to almost just not do anything because almost everything that has frenzy can be put in a fire team and just negate the fact that it has frenzy.
And it's really easy to forget.
That too.
Like the fact that you need to do something to trigger it, and it's a common thing in Infinity, but you're not necessarily thinking about which model is doing what at the time. Like that's something that can sometimes go under the radar. I guess one last bit of speculation before we wrap. Combat Instinct is a new special skill that was shown on a couple units. It's shown on the Hatamoto, and it's shown on the Black Air, which are very, very different kinds of units. The Black Air is a MSV2 multi-sniper model with mimetism, and in this case, neurocynetics on the sniper rifle. I'm guessing that's not going to be on all of them. I think that's special for the sniper rifle. And the Hatamoto is kind of a all-rounder, like close combat, gunfighter, specialist, lieutenant monstrosity.
Yeah.
So, what's your guess for Combat Instinct? What do you think that will do for a unit?
There's a couple ways it could go. We haven't seen tactical awareness yet, when both of those units could potentially be a unit where like tactical awareness would make sense, and this could be something that a new name for some level of like tactical awareness kind of thing generates an extra order or whatever. But also, when it was mentioned that Sixth Sense is likely getting broken up in having, the different components become different skills, like the being able to shoot back from out of line of fire versus the ignoring stealth part might be different skills. Combat Instinct might be the shoot back if you shot out of line of fire, or it could be the ignoring stealth part. But I think it would make sense that for like they try to shoot you in the back and you get to respawn, like that part of Sixth Sense. Combat Instinct sounds like it could be that aspect of it, if that's the route that they're going.
That's what I'm thinking too. I've heard some talk as well about people guessing that it's tactical awareness. I think tactical awareness is just going to be less prevalent, but will still be called tactical awareness.
Yeah.
I think that Combat Sense is one of the components of what is currently Sixth Sense. And I think the two main components, when I was talking with Bostria, the two main components that they're looking at it as is the shoot things out of line of fire and the being able to respond through zero vis zones without penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And Combat Sense could be either one of those. Like either one sounds like it could be Combat Instinct. Either, you're aware of things going on around you or something on the other side of something you can't see through. I could see it as either one of those. But that also kind of hints that fire teams will be less potent, in addition to the Dice Gods video where they interviewed Bostria as well. That was a really good watch. A lot of good info there. But that fire teams, I think, are going to generally get toned down more or less across the board, and splitting up Sixth Sense is one way to do that. So I wonder if Combat Instinct will be the thing that they get instead of Sixth Sense.
I'm also excited for fire teams to change, and I like the proposed changes because it seems to be kind of a happy middle ground, at least to me, between like late N3 and N4 fire teams, where kind of, yes, you had some differences in how you would construct it, but like it was almost effectively like an anything goes, like versus N2 and earlier N3, where a fire team was all constructed from one unit type, and you might have a character that was allowed to join them.
Exactly. Yeah, it was funny. I was just looking at my Human Sphere N2 book just a couple days ago when I was looking through this book, and that was one of the things, looking at the sectorial lists. It's like, yeah, almost no one could add extra things to fire teams. Your fire team was 5 Fusiliers, or your fire team was 5 orcs, or that's what you could make them out of.
Yeah,
and you had to have very special dispensations to be able to do otherwise. And I think that's kind of, we're going to return to in between, like you said, where I'm guessing that fire team purity will be based on how many of the core unit are there. So if the fire team has one core unit, which it has to have, everyone moves together. if you have 2 of the core unit, then you get this bonus, and 3, then you get that bonus. But if you only have, say, a Fusilier and, a blade, a blocker, and a bolt and an orc, then you don't get any bonuses. But if you have 5 Fusiliers or 5 bolts or 5 orcs, you get all the bonuses. And then it's just in between instead of having multiple charts.
Yeah. And I personally liked the older way of doing it. Thematically, visually, it made a lot of sense. And yeah, it kind of made it hard in some respects. Like, doing heavy infantry pain trains was expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was half your list or more just to do that easily. Yep. But it was super powerful. So it's kind of the cost benefit trade off there. But I really liked, one of my favorites that I ran for a long time, even into N4, was the 5-man Briscard team in Merovingia. Even when I could swap some other things in and out of it, like I usually just kept it as the 5 Briscards because that team works so well together that it just made sense to keep them that way.
Sure.
There's some other, and I don't mind if there's some limited stuff where it's like, this has the keyword for this, so it can jump in. Like, I understand like wild cards are still going to be a thing. But they're going to, unless they have the purity links or whatever, they're not going to contribute. But, some things still having some of those, like, the character that is of the unit type makes sense. Like Patsy Garnett into orcs. That makes sense. Or having a few things here and there where it would thematically make sense that this model would work well with these guys. Like background wise, like I said, gameplay wise, it's a little bit different story, but background wise, like a veteran Kazakh leading line Kazakhs.
Yeah.
Like
that. Less of that is good.
Yeah, that makes sense thematically. Gameplay wise, it is very woo.
Sure. But I think with that we'll transition over to our final thoughts on the kind of new leaks coming out for N5. But I want to say thank you to all of our patrons who support us. We really appreciate it. It helps cover costs of the show, so things don't really have to come out of pocket very much. So thank you very, very much for that. None of it is paid back out to us. We don't collect any sort of paycheck, so anything you do contribute goes back into the show in its entirety. But if that's something that you are interested in joining, you can find us at patreon.com/metachemistry. And in return, we offer some benefits depending on that level of support, like early access to episodes. There's final voting on polls when those come out. And we also have some private channels on the Discord for our patron members or Patreon members. And as far as our Discord itself goes, that is available in the show notes as well. We'd love to have you there because other than those couple channels, it's a free and public Discord for people to come hang out and chat with us or show off your paint jobs or talk about lists or make wild speculations on the new edition or whatever else catches your fancy. But with that said, Ian, any final thoughts, any last tidbits on some of these recent updates that we've been seeing for N5?
Yeah, I think that everything that I'm seeing, I think is a net positive for the game. I'm not going to say that, I don't like Infinity, because obviously I like Infinity. It's my main game. But I do think that, like on a certain level, I'm not necessarily bored with Infinity, but like there isn't a whole lot new to Infinity. We've been playing this for so long that it's like, okay, it's the mechanics are down, the units are down. Like, you don't get a lot of surprises. Sometimes, faction gets reworked. There's some new units and stuff, but it's just a little bit here and there that gets added in. And maybe a little bit of a sense of like staleness from that. But I don't necessarily think that's even the right way to term it, because I still love the game, absolutely. But
Sure, yeah.
I think that this is just such a net positive with everything because it brings a lot of the list building back down to kind of a manageable level. You're not just scrolling through endless amounts of units like in Pano and Ariadna right now. I think it's going to be just a lot easier for new players to get into the game. It sounds like there's enough of a shakeup that veteran players have new things to delve into and see how they work and what new combinations they can make with the tools that they have on hand. I love that vanilla is getting a more restricted list and functioning more like an expanded sectorial. That I think again, net positive overall for the game, and I'm excited to see how this all shakes out and get my first games of N5 in over the next couple of months. I'm just, yeah, I'm not usually like 100% positive on things, but I haven't seen anything so far that turns me off. I think
Sure.
everything I'm seeing, it's like that's different, and I see where you're going for it, and I really think that this actually might be a good thing, and let's follow through with this, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think generally I would agree as well. Like N5 is ticking a lot of boxes for me as far as things that I wasn't terribly happy with in the game. The overabundance of direct templates. Changing shotguns will go a long way with that. The uh, abundance of mercenaries that were outperforming vanilla choices in multiple vanilla armies is essentially gone. Um, those sorts of things were definitely high on my list as far as things that I just really didn't want to see. And it's kind of focused faction identities. Now, it's hard to say without seeing more sectorials, but it looks like that factions are going to be more focused around what they do best and the units that they like to bring, and just kind of looking at a vanilla faction and knowing that, you know, 3 different vanilla factions or 4 different vanilla factions are all running several of these same units, even though they're entirely different factions. I'm really happy to see that. Otherwise, I think the fire team changes tentatively without knowing more sound good overall. I think the super fire teams where you have the bunch of little guys powering one really strong unit uh, just isn't really that great from a gameplay perspective. It just seems like you should have to work a little bit more to get that sort of boost to those units. So I'm glad that that's going to be the case. And I think probably most importantly is that it looks like there's a lot of tools to make it easier to play the game without taking away the spirit of the game. And I think that's going to attract a lot of new players because of all of the push in media that CB's been doing. And so making these little quality of life changes that assist newer players, I think is really, really good for the game. So yeah, I think the future is looking bright for Infinity. I look forward to taking a look at more stuff as it comes out. On behalf of Metachemistry, this has been Devin.
And Ian, and that's the meta.